Yeah, that industrial action and ongoing concern for Qantas, and for more on that, I'm joined from Sydney by the Transport Workers Union National Secretary, Michael Caine. Thanks very much for your time. Are you concerned at all? There's a 3% raise on the table. It comes with back pay. If not accepted, it's gone. So if you continue to play hardball, ultimately your members could be worse off.
I think this is a serious question now for the company. These workers are determined, but they're desperate, Tom. They are workers that have been forced basically onto 20-hour-a-week arrangements. That's not a lot to look after your family. It equates to really about $450 in guaranteed income. And it's easy to understand the Qantas CEO might have lost touch with what that means, because his package equates to around $456,000 a week, and these workers really are in a situation where they've been left with no choice but to express their views, because the company shut down negotiations, the company's put an ultimatum to the workforce, the door remains open from the workers, the worker committee's written to the company, they want to sit down with the company. This is not a wage dispute, Tom, this is about workers getting enough hours to look after themselves and their families.
You say workers have been left with no choice, but Qantas is saying that indeed, or in fact, strike numbers are down. Is that accurate?
Well, no, again, it would be really helpful if Qantas management started taking the concerns of their workers seriously and listening to them. There are over 200 workers on strike yesterday. It's incredibly difficult to take action at the best of times, Tom. But these workers who are so lowly paid or on so few hours, it's very brave for them to stand up and say to the company, look, we want you to listen. The door's open, let's sit down. There are plenty of available hours in this operation, Jetstar.
But are fewer workers striking? Is this losing momentum within the workforce?
No, it's not losing momentum at all. What the workers want is for this company to sit down and negotiate in good faith. They asked them to do that last Thursday. The Federal Minister asked them last Friday. The opposition spokesman asked them on Monday. None of this should have happened yesterday, this strike action. The company, it will cost them nothing to sit down and talk. And that's what these workers want. And they want to talk about what's meaningful to them and their families, and that is some more guaranteed hours so that they can go to the bank, so they can get a loan, so they can make progress for themselves and their family. These workers are not in a game. These workers are to look after their families and make some progress.
Right. But that number of 200, is that down from previous strikes? Are the numbers dropping for whatever reason?
No, this is a determined workforce. I was in the room with the Sydney workforce yesterday, 123 of the 126 workers in that workforce on strike. Determined, disappointed because the company has taken this approach of shutting down negotiations, but determined to make sure that the company listens to them, the company listens to their concerns about making sure that they're able to support their families into the future. You know, many of these workers, Tom, say to themselves, well, it's time now for us to stand up and be counted. Things can't get much worse for us on $450 a week. We need to make progress for ourselves and our families, and all we ask is for the company to sit down and negotiate in good faith.
The 3% with back pay as well is more generous than just if that came with more hours. Would you be happy then?
Well, as I said, this is not about pay, and the workforce made that clear again yesterday. This is about hours. The company doesn't want to sit down and talk about hours, and the workforce is mystified by it.
I understand what you're saying with the company, but is that you would accept 3%, or even if you have to get more hours, perhaps a bit lower than 3, you're not quibbling over that number, it's just the hours that you would sign on to that?
Well, Tom, absolutely 3% of not very many hours is not very much. So the issue here, the heart of the issue, is to sit down with the company and get some of those available hours in this operation over into the guaranteed column for these workers so they can have some certainty for their families. Qantas and Jetstar know that this is the core issue, and they know that if they sit down with the workforce, this can be resolved.
When you say core issue, is that the only issue? You'd accept 3% with more guaranteed hours?
Well, that's up to the workforce, but expressed again strongly yesterday that is the core issue. 3% of not very many hours is not very much.
And these workers want more. But you're in there and on these negotiations. Are you saying 3% would be acceptable with more hours or not? Possibly not.
This is well, as I said, whether it's 3% or it's 4%, if it's not very many hours, it's not very much. The key thing that these workers want is more hours. And they know, and Jetstar knows, that those hours are available. These are important workers. They do such an important function. They're the last line between when passengers take off, making sure the plane is okay, properly balanced, the doors are closed. I think the Australian public would expect that these workers are properly treated.
I'm just trying to clear up this position, though. You keep talking about the core issue or the principal one. Is it the only one? Is the 3% acceptable if it comes with more core hours?
I think the workforce is... the Work Committee have made it absolutely clear to Jetstar that they are willing to negotiate any arrangement if it is based on an increase in these hours. They've made it clear. What's happened here is that Jetstar has shut down negotiations. The agreement that they've put on the table actually cuts a whole range of core terms and conditions and says to these workers in what's effectively a ransom note, Tom, that unless you sign on to this reduction in workplace conditions, we won't give you the pay that you're owed from last March, from when this deal was supposed to have been done. So that's the real situation, and the real situation is that Qantas and Jetstar know these hours are available and they're refusing to negotiate with their workforce.
Michael Caine from the Transport Workers Union, thanks for your time today.
Thanks, Tom.